Hello world, welcome to episode 5 of Improving Space from issue number 1. This episode is from the last cluster over there on the right, and this episode is called New Ideas for Old Problems. So we're getting into a different topic here than the previous episode. So I hope that if you watched the episode called Pictures or Diagramming that you enjoyed those. And I do hope that people who sincerely like to draw found some ideas in those videos that they enjoy. I did make those videos as standalone content, and so it's possible that that was really what you were looking for and that really scratched an itch, those videos about pictures and diagramming. So if so, that's great. It's also possible, and I hope that that anybody who would be involved in the construction industry might have gotten something out of the video 6 documents. It's just a beginning of my framework for understanding this problem, but I am hoping that people got something out of that. And if that's all you needed, if that's all you're looking for, that's great. And I hope that those videos serve you well. Finally, you may have been interested by the ideas in A File Evolves. You may be interested in kind of new ideas in technology and thinking about cooperating better. You may be frustrated by the existing inefficiencies in the design and construction industry or in another industry that you see some kind of similarities with. So I do hope that all of those videos, whoever's watched them, whatever was in there that was interesting to you, I hope that you enjoyed it. However, there may be viewers out there who are kind of wondering if there's anything else. In other words, if I know I don't watch a whole lot of YouTube or online content, and I'm kind of always looking for big things and big ideas. And if that's the case, then you may have been a little bit, not possibly underwhelmed, but just kind of wondering, where is the big exciting idea that we're all kind of looking for and waiting for. And if that's the case, if you're kind of looking for something more from these videos, then I hope that you will join me for this next video, because this video is really what it's all about for me. This concept that I'm going to be talking about in this series is really why this whole series is here, and why I'm trying to drum up conversation and drum up interest in doing things differently. It's kind of all comes down to this. So we're going to brush past some of the introductory things, because I am kind of rushing through ideas in this video. There's a lot to cover, and there will be subsequent episodes coming out, prequel episodes, sequels, kind of exploring this idea and where it came from and all the problems that it hopes to fix. So those will be coming out. So I am going to just situate you briefly into what was going through my head when I first started designing this project. So this idea started in architecture school as an undergraduate thesis project. And the idea of my thesis project, the thing I was interested in, was idealism. I was interested in the idea of how can we work together? What are the successful ways to get people to work together to solve some of the problems that we currently solve, and we were confronted with 20 years ago. Environmentalism, political polarization, all of these problems have been around with us for a long time, and I was trying to figure out how you kind of get that oomph in a people to try and do something about those problems. And it wasn't so much that a light bulb went off as that I was looking at an old unused light bulb in the ceiling, and that was the light bulb of idealism. I had seen in America's history, especially America, I know it exists in other countries, but America especially is a country of idealists and of people trying to look for that next idea to improve life, and while also being very passionate about the things that our forefathers did and mothers to improve our lives for us, while trying to take what is valuable and also have a healthy dose of criticism for the mistakes that we've learned from. So nevertheless, I was looking at that kind of light bulb of idealism and saying, when is that hope going to go off, or how do we collectively move towards something better as a society? Understanding that light bulb is off for a reason. We had World War II and totalitarian regimes, and that light bulb of idealism of let's do it, let's get this thing done, can be very, in the worst cases, dangerous, and in the best cases, the idealistic communities that you study never lasted more than a handful of years, maybe 10 years at most, before they kind of fall apart, and the idealism that motivated them to build a building or set up a industry that could support each other in a school system, all of those things would kind of fall by the wayside. So it seemed I was interested in how you get idealism to work for you and avoid all of the kind of bad things about it. That was what I was searching for. in that search, I came upon a neighborhood study for a street that I was going to propose a design for, and the neighborhood study kind of talked through a community involvement component of it. So the neighborhood study had at the end of it a list of feedback from the community, and it kind of showed me this process that I've since observed in the real world in the intervening years, this kind of general default process of community feedback. So I'm going to kind of talk about that now, and understanding this is a very generic process, but this is what I was looking at when I was studying and trying to figure out a problem for idealism. It wasn't even, it was barely related to it. I just knew that what was going on wasn't working. So this is kind of, to me, what was going on with the community feedback loop. So it seemed to me like citizens have problems with their neighborhood, and having an issue, say with a blighted piece of property on your block, having an issue is what we humans do. We notice problems. So in the typical community feedback and the kind of governance system that we have, a typical process for implementing change would be for the community member who noticed this problem to go and then talk to a representative about it. So they bring the problem to the attention of their representative and say they want something done about it. That representative then, in my understanding and what I've seen, then the representative then kind of meets with the people who are in a position to do something about this. So developers, other lawmakers, other people in the community, churches, anybody who can kind of do something about this problem and figure out a solution to the problem. So say the solution is putting something on that formerly empty block. So the representative kind of talks with businesses, figures out what they can help get done from the private sector to fix that problem. In modern community development meetings, you often see, more and more, you see the public actually given an opportunity to input on the design. So 20 years ago, the public members of the public did have some opportunity in some meetings to input on aesthetic measures and things like that. You see that more and more. But the problem is when those at those community meetings, when the plans are kind of unveiled, or you're starting to talk through the plans and see what is possible and what's feasible. When you come to that community and try to present them with the options, what you get more often than not is some people who are willing to participate and go along and help guide the discussion about aesthetic choices and brick selection, and possibly renters and things like that. But mostly, or what you often see, and it seems like these meetings fall apart because of, is that the community then talks about problems still. They're still there to talk about their problems and whether or not this development is going to solve those problems. So it's very common to go to community meetings about a new development and hear people talking about the general problems of the neighborhood, like traffic, concerns about litter, and people congregating in areas where it would make residents uncomfortable. So you go to these meetings and hear people talking about the problems. And the last page of the brochure, or the community planning document that I read 20 years ago for a town in Asbury Park, had at the last page a section called "This is what we heard. Is this what you said?" And it had a list of the kind of 15 or so comments that the public had said. So this, to me, the general frustration with the political process was, to me, the problem. And I looked at this and didn't think, why can't the public just understand what is doable here and go along with this representative and developers trying to involve them in the process? My thought wasn't, why can't the public just kind of behave? The thought was, why can't we have a better system for this kind of frustrations and community input? And so in just looking at that, literally just that back page about seeing what the common industry practice was for community involvement and having criticism of that, I came up with this idea that really, it seemed to me that a really good kind of plug in the dam to stop this problem would be if at these meetings, at any meeting, there was an ongoing tally of community's goals. So there was actually like a register where we talked about what the community wants, and slowly over time built it more and more. And it was a constant standing list of the community's goals and what they want both their elected officials and the private sector to do about these problems and towards these goals. If you had that kind of running list, then I imagine at a community meeting about that development, you can take questions, take issues, put them on the overall list about issues with crime and littering and traffic and things like that, but then talk about how this proposal that we're here to meet about is part of of dozens and hundreds of actual proposals that the city is working towards and that the private sector is working towards, and help the public who have gone to this meeting to talk about their frustrations, help them see the big picture. And really, if they want to talk about the big picture, then help them see the big picture. So this mechanism, it seemed to me like just having a running list of goals so that people went to these meetings and felt like even if they weren't talking about the development, they were doing something productive. They were making their voice heard, and having a place to store these goals and learn from them and develop them and respond to them over time would be beneficial for everybody, both for the public to feel like the process wasn't as frustrating, and I would imagine for elected officials to be able to have something intelligent to respond to when they come up with their proposals. So this was kind of a why aren't we doing this moment for me in this process. It just seemed like a list of goals would be would serve to alleviate a lot of problems, and again provide continuity and make it feel like it wasn't just kind of going into a black box. So the problem, to reiterate, is not that I'm trying to push people away from the kind of common community engagement strategies that you have now, such as having community input on aesthetics or possibly like tenant selections. I'm not trying to push away from that level of community engagement on things that are open to community input. Not trying to push away from that. I am trying to push towards the idea of thinking much more broadly about what we can do. And I know I use these images that make it look fanciful. It's this castle in the sky. I'm leaning into this idea of idealism because it is an imaginary thing. But I still think that talking about how I imagine my future looking, what I would like the future to look like, what you would like the future to look like, talking about those things just in and of itself is what I'm trying to get people to do. So I looked at, as I said, this was 20 years ago, I was concerned and obsessed almost with that idea of how do you bring back idealism, or like this desire for change in the future. How do you get that light bulb to work? And I started looking at this list of goals, this just functional tool of a list of goals. And I put those two together and thought long and hard, and thought that a list of goals, or some kind of list of what the country is trying to do, could actually be that idealism in a way. It really is the thing that we're pointing to and saying we're hoping to get there, we want to get there. And so it seemed to me like that list of goals, or that kind of ongoing register of what the community, what our country thinks we should be accomplishing, would actually be that idealism that we were missing, that thing that we could we try and move towards and try and point to and say this is what we're trying to do. So from that notion, I thought about it. I started imagining what this could look like, what it could look like to participate in this kind of goals register. How would you manage that goals register? And I thought for a long time, and the days and weeks and months turned into years, and I kept thinking about this, iterating it, talking about the idea to people. I've had presentations, I tried to write a couple of books, always trying to get the idea and its simplicity out there to get each other to understand what we're trying to do here. And what I've come up with is the video that you were watching, this entire video series. The idea is for a website or an online platform that I'm calling the Middle Way Party. And the idea is that it's an online platform where you can go to discuss your goals, where the entire country or your community, both really, it's scaled so that the entire country is doing it, but it's also achievable at a community level to understand what the goals are. And so this platform I'm calling the Middle Way Party, and that is what I'm sharing with you in this video and in future episodes in this series. So I've got a lot of videos. I've got videos about the online environment, and I know it looks like he's trapped in it. That is a criticism, it's a running criticism of being trapped in these online environments, and something I'm going to be pushing against. So, but these videos are about managing the process of understanding first our goals for an issue and then what the proposals are on the table to help solve them. I talk about channel zero, or the idea of wanting kind of empty space, and the kind of negative features of the phones today, which push everything towards you and kind of are getting you to look at everything. I've got a lot of ideas about how to create a better online environment, and I hope that some of my architectural background, I know that I think of online space in much the same way as physical space, in terms of who's looking, what your privacy issues are, what the space feels like, who you can talk to, what the rules of it are. And so I want to bring a lot of the thoughtfulness of a healthy spatial environment to online space. And so that is, a lot of videos are about what this website or what this environment would look like, and use cases and how we work through it. I also have videos on the implications to the broader society of if we could do something like this. So what would then it look like for your average politician? What would their process look like? How would companies be impacted by the ability to coordinate with a larger discussion? Institutions, voters, how all of this could kind of help massage life into a better place for a lot of us. So those are all those upcoming episodes, and I have a lot to talk about. But for the rest of this episode, I'm going to focus on a couple on the kind of core mechanics of the site, and get to the question of what is the middle ground, or what would be the common goals that we'd be looking at on this board. After all, you go to these meetings and it seems like everybody's got different priorities and different goals. So what exactly am I talking about, that there are any common goals between the two polarized sides of the American political environment? So to wrap your head around it, here's a real simple explanation. A goal is getting to the top of the mountain. The proposal is how you get there. The proposal in this case, in this video example, would be rock climbing to the top of the mountain, as opposed to taking a helicopter. And we make that, or I'm in this website, the Middle Way Party, make that important distinction, because goals are actually things that, in my experience, you can get people to agree on. It's generally the proposals where the rubber hits the road, and where decisions have to be made and trade-offs have to be made. So, for example, the goal of easier access between two sides of a river is something that, in theory, many people could agree with. However, when you talk about where to put the bridge, you're going to have a harder time getting everybody to agree with that location of the bridge. That is just the way that proposals go in balancing what you're going to do and the trade-offs that are being made with other goals, such as environmentalism or lower tax revenue. That is where you will determine really where people's opinions lie. Like, many people want easier access, many people want to get to the top of the mountain. It has to do with how you're going to get there and whether those trade-offs of that proposal are worth it. In the Middle Way Party platform, goals would be represented by beads, and that is because goals, if you liken it to an American citizens, one person, one vote, everybody is equal when it comes to what their own goals are in life. A millionaire's goals are not more valid than a non-millionaire's goals, and so for that reason, goals would be represented as beads, and the mechanism that I will discuss to get people to agree on goals, or get two people who are both talking about environmentalism to come to a single sentence that encapsulates their goals in plain English that both of them can understand. That is a mechanical process that I have it is very easy to see how AI can do that. I've tested that out. And so the ability for AI is a key ingredient to being able to get two people to talk to each other, show two people and show them the subject that they have in common or that they need to work through, and help them understand where their common goals are and where they divide. So through AI, you can find a room full of people and try and help them understand what goals they actually do have in common. If you can get two people to both say that they are concerned about the environment, or that their goal would be that the environment of Earth is sustainable for future generations, two people can agree on that goal. Now, what the definition of sustainable is, whether it just means that there's enough crops, or if it means that there's an abundance of Garden of Eden kind of thing, whether future generations extends to just the next couple of generations of Americans or the next 100 generations on the planet. Those different definitions can be, the individuals can rely on their own individual definitions of what they meant when they thought the environment needs to be sustainable. But nevertheless, if they can coalesce around that phrase, then you can actually have people who agree with this idea of a sustainable environment, but they would defer the actual proposals, like the actual suggestion of what sustainable means, how many parts per million of plastics are in the water, and what all those definitions are can vary from person to person. But the overall goal of we want the environment to be sustainable is something that you can imagine people agreeing on. And so if you can get that, like I said, every person is entitled to one vote, and everybody's goals are equal. And so if you can identify how many people agree with a goal about the environment or a goal about money in politics, say, you can really easily visually tell when it crossed the threshold to, say, 80% of people agreeing with that goal. That is my notional threshold for a common goal. If 80% of people agree with it, I would call that a common goal, especially if it's reasonably stable across party lines. So a proposal, in distinction to a goal, a proposal, we really care about who it comes from. A proposal to build a rocket from Elon Musk looks a lot different than a proposal to build a rocket from me. So a proposal, it really matters what the background is of the people behind it, what research has been done into it, what steps have been made, what money has been spent on it. So all those things matter for a proposal in a way that they don't with goals. And for that reason then, whereas goals, once we have a common goal that two people agree with, we want to kind of simplify its representation into a bead and into a collection of beads like a stalagmite, stalactite. For a proposal, we want to be able to clearly identify which one and even rank them. So proposals will be represented in the Middle Way Party by something like this. So a default would be a light bulb, a good idea proposal. And then you will be able to, or there's a process for being able to assess them and understand all of the expert assessments, from newspaper articles to third-party nonprofits who are wish to speak to a law that's being considered, or a regulation, or what a company is doing down the street. So those proposals and the assessments of those proposals by other experts matter. And for that reason, I have a system for being able to rank proposals, understand who thinks that they're good. So does teachers support this new proposal on the table for charter schools, or who is it popular with and who is it unpopular with? All of those things we want to be able to navigate, and the Middle Way Party system would have a way of navigating all of that. So that still might leave you a little bit questioning, what, though, are we talking about with common ground? How, in this day and age, how will what I've shown you result in any kind of coming together of the American public? And so I ask you to consider environmentalism, consider nature and the trees. So I know a lot of people who vote Republican concerned about the natural environment and are part of wildlife conservancy boards, and you name it. They go above and beyond what I do in my local area to protect our natural resources. And yet, I see some of those people voting for people who seem to run against that desire, that they care about the environment, and yet they're voting for people who don't appear to care about the environment. And that is because in a vote, we are all limited to one binary choice. We're all making a decision, the decision, which seems the best one. Which party do we vote for? And so you can't discredit people choosing to go with a politician who has a different set of priorities. That is a rational choice. So the way I look at it is that you can have two people choose different politicians, make different choices, who both have fundamentally the same values. You can have a person who cares about the environment and the current American economy, and they make the tough choice because of the information that they're looking at, say like the long arc of history. They make a choice for one type of law or for a regulation that preserves natural resources, because they are trying to make make a choice that makes sense based on the information that they have most readily available. Another person looking at that same question, if you've got the environment, you could protect the environment, or you could take resources from it to strengthen the current economy. They may be making that choice based on just another set of information that's coming their way. So if you're watching a lot of news, you would be very aware, more so aware of the economic struggles that are facing the country, and you'd perhaps be willing to roll the dice on future environmental outcomes for the sake of lowering gas prices and getting food on the table for ordinary Americans easier. So you've got two voters making different decisions, carefully weighing the pros and cons of the environment and the economy, and I don't see a problem with that. What I would like to see, though, is for any candidates who are on the stage in primaries or in a final election, I would like to see that any candidates share those values, and simply that we don't put we're not interested in electing a candidate who doesn't care about a value that we frankly think is important. So a person who thinks the environment is important, I wouldn't like to see them voting for a candidate who just completely doesn't think that it is important. So we're not trying to make any pre-selections or anything. I'm just trying to get us to a place where the things that the average, if 80% of Americans agree that the environment is a concern, that home prices are a concern, that all these other things that Americans are concerned about are concerned with, we want politicians to have taken up those values as their own if they weren't already their own. And I think that just by nature of doing that, by being interested as an overall voting populace in voting for politicians who are trying to satisfy the kind of middle ground of all these Americans' goals and chart a course that would be acceptable to the overall electorate and not just their base, I think that would put us in a much better position to have a rational conversation, and also to be able to talk about our own, for the American public to kind of put the first foot forward as far as talking about what issues are important, because politicians, as we know, are their human nature. They're trying to preserve themselves in their job. They're trying to represent themselves as well as they think that they are doing, and they think that they are making the right choices, and so they're trying to represent those choices as being correct. And so we as the American people then need to talk about what we see the problems are and focus our politicians on the problem, because if they start talking about it first, oftentimes the American public doesn't want to hear it. So we need to respect the fact that they are trying to gauge what we want, and we need to tell them what we want for our system to not be relied on just kind of going for the brightest, shiniest candy, and what promises can we give the American public to calm them down for another 2 years and get elected. We don't want that. We want to be talking about our values and our problems. So it's important I want to kind of close or wrap up the idea of this middle way party by talking about the fact that I'm trying to not change as much as possible. So I'm not talking about getting rid of anything, even the electoral college, and so I'm not trying to talk about getting rid of anything. I imagine still having all the same processes, all the same volunteers and voting booths, and the wonderful processes that we have in our American democracy. All I'm talking about essentially is adding a TV channel, adding a place to go to understand not first and foremost what politicians are saying, first and foremost what the American public wants, and for you to put your opinions in there, and then be able to make informed decisions on the politicians who are up on stage based on the responses and how they say they're going to tackle solving those common problems. So that is the idea here, and in order to make this a reality, I'm going to start a nonprofit, Middle Way Party. I have the domain middlewayparty.org. This is going to be a 501c4, which allows it to involve itself in politics. So the NRA is a 501c4. So it just allows you to support a political party or a candidate. And the only reason I am making it a 501c4 is so that I can talk about so that I can play nicely with Democrats and Republicans. Basically, the whole point of the middle way party would just be to promote any candidate who stipulates that if they are satisfied that they've seen that 80% of the public agrees with the goal, so it's not even tied to, once it turns on the light on the middle way party, they got to do it. No, it's the politicians should just say, if they are satisfied that a goal is that Americans as a whole support this goal, then that will be part of their platform. So essentially, and then we would support, the middle way party would support politicians and ask voters to support politicians who adopt the goals of the public as their stated goals. So we're just kind of supporting politicians who want to treat the Americans' goals seriously and kind of have a rational conversation with America's goals, talk about, again, how they are going to try and solve them, and not brush concerns under the rug, but try and really elevate concerns and talk about, validate them, and talk about what they're going to do about them. So that is the idea of the middle way party. And the idea from my end, what I would love to do is make these videos, so be able to basically support myself on talking about these ideas. If I'm able to raise money from these videos, that's actually, if the tips for the videos that you're watching, which are going to me, the tip jar at the bottom of the website is for me and Dented Pencil and for my bread. But if I am able to get an amount with that I can actually slough it off and start founding this company, then I will, founding that nonprofit, then I will. Otherwise, there will be, I will fundraise specifically for the middle way party. So I just want to be clear that tip jar at the bottom of the Improving Space website is not, that is an income stream for me. But the idea would be that the middle way party would be something that I'd love to found, not take an income from, and just be able to help other people do this idea, build this idea. So I'd love to just be able to talk about it and kind of guide what I think would make sense, but then actually see the thing built by a team of really qualified people. And so I would love to be able to do that, but it all depends on people supporting this idea. It all depends really on whether the American public wants to change our democracy and wants to take this idea for the middle way party up as a good first draft of something to do. That's really all this is. It's a first draft. But if you stick with me and watch these other videos, get your head around it, get interested in it, I hope that it would give you something to hope for, which is what this idea has done for me. So please, if you like this idea, what I am asking you to do is share it with people. This is where the idea lives. It lives in this video for now. I'm trying to get it out there, but the only way to do that is for, if you think it's valuable, that you tell your friends and family, and that you share the idea with people. That's the only way that we can make anything happen. What would be wonderful also what would be wonderful, I meant this to be a, what I'm really begging you to do is share it if you like this idea, and if you like it, and what would be wonderful is a tip in the tip jar of Improving Space. But that is just for me, but that is to allow me to keep making these videos and keep talking about this idea. That is it. Thank you very much for watching. All of these images, as well as the entire slideshow itself, is Creative Commons, so anybody can talk about their feedback or their reactions to this, either picture by picture, or just take the whole thing and do what I'm doing, and say whatever you want about it. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that I can return for a second issue of Improving Space. I hope that this is well received by the public. Thank you very much. Bye.